just a minute. Once it goes, I don't know that I'm going to get one, but Hangout on Air is live. I don't get. I'm not seeing a.
And a back code.
Oh wait, links. I got it. I got it.
Fantastic.
How are you doing? Go see the red light. See the red light come on.
Siblings. Siblings.
Yeah.
Excellent.
You know the whole siblings thing?
Oh my God, yeah. From Spinal Tap. Is there anybody our age who is not right now?
Check 1, 2.
Oh, is that what the joke is? Okay, so 420, 84. Yes, sir. Alright, so can you grab any questions out of the box? Oh, more, yeah. And then 120.
So, for me, it's like flashing on.
Sorry.
It's I'm not getting a. Yeah, I don't know. It says it's live. I'm not seeing it. Not seeing the link through.
Or not. There's about 4 minutes. Put yourself in the right place. And so use this here, that'd be wonderful. Mayor Gilmore here. And number 10 here. Chris is already in your spot. And Frank, never. Yes, right there. Right.
If you want to move this stuff.
Oh, no. All right. And I'm going to give you my microphone or your question. So if you're already with
Sure. Oh, okay. Yeah, go. Take it back.
Audio.
So I'll take you there. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming. I particularly want to thank you for coming here. Every time I come cover an election, I always think these are some great people, and especially the way it works with the public. And so I'd like to thank all the candidates for coming, and of course I'd like to thank all of you for coming as well. One thing I do ask is pretty much nowadays, the obvious, please make sure you all come up first of all. And then the second thing I'd like to ask everybody is just be respectful, no hooting and hollering, no clapping while the candidates are talking. And we're going to work at that. I have 4 questions set to go. I just got 2 more from the box in the back. I'm going to ask the questions. And then I think the order who's going to answer each question by the moderator, so there's no, you're going to go first every time, that kind of thing. And so the first question, I'm assuming I'm going to ask the candidates if they're ready. And the first question I have.
That's 2-minute opening.
Okay. Oh, thank you very much. Yeah. I forgot. Each of you, before I ask the questions, each of you will get 2 minutes to. And then we're going to time you. The yellow.
It's at 1.5.
Is 1.5.
And that's
And then so when 90 seconds is up, you're going to get a yellow card, and when the red is up, you're good. Okay, thank you very much. So we can start with Mr. Ogie, an introduction, and you have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank the Sun and Alameda for putting on this event. The best part of running for office to me, I think, is being able to come to forums like this and hear what people are talking about and knocking on doors like what their issues are. I think that's the most educational and elected to the council. I think it's the most beneficial. My name is Jim Odie. I'm a candidate for Alameda City Council. Every day I work hard for the people of Alameda. I'm the district director for our local assembly members. In that job, I help solve constituent service problems. I help shape policy, and I collaborate with leaders here in the East Bay to solve some of the problems that are facing the state and the East Bay. I've lived in Alameda for 20 years now. I relocated here from Chicago. I grew up in a Indian household with my parents, who really like the values of hard work. That's what I do every day, and that's what I want to keep doing on City Council. Here in Alameda, I've been honored to serve on the city's open government commission for the first year, looking at transparency, accountability, and compliance with the Sunshine Law. Then I served on the finance committee over at the Alameda Hospital, helping guide them through rough under time. Which now with the alliance with Alameda Health Systems, I think we're now going to have the cash inflow at the hospital as well as the increase in daily census to keep the hospital open. So we have an emergency room here on the island in case of a disaster. I served on the city's America's Cup 34 committee with my friend Jack there, and we helped attract business here to Alameda during the America's Cup. Right now, I live on the main island for 13 years. I lived on Harbor Bay. I'm the only candidate that would be elected or that's running that's actually lived on Harbor Bay. That's driven on Island Drive during commute hours, and I think that's a perspective that's important to bring to the City Council. While in Harbor Bay, I was on my homeowners association as their treasurer. Served 10 years doing that. Helped balance the budget, make sure that we kept costs down for all of our residents. I'm running to preserve the preserve our local Alameda. I think the city is going in a positive direction. We have a few challenges, but for the most part, I think people are happy here. I want to keep Alameda moving forward and keep working hard and fighting for the things that are most important to us. Our good schools, our safe streets, our open spaces, and our strong, vibrant local economy. I appreciate your support when the time comes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next is Mayor Gilmore.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here. I want to thank our organizers and our hosts for the library. My name is Marie Gilmore, and I have had the pleasure of volunteering for Alameda for the last 20 years. I started out on the Rec and Park Commission. I spent some time on the planning board, and I've had the distinct honor and pleasure of being your mayor for the last 4 years. In the last 4 years, we've accomplished a lot. We've gotten the no-cost transfer of Alameda Point. We are about to bring 30 acres of parks online, and that's not counting what's out at Alameda Point. We have worked on our pension and our OPEB liabilities, and we are moving this island forward. I have executed over the last 4 years on some of these things. I really work well and play well with others. I have regional relationships that benefit Alameda because a lot of our issues like traffic and job creation are regional issues, not just local issues. I am fortunate enough to have the endorsement of Senator Ellen Corbett, Assemblymember Rod Bonta, Assemblymember Skinner, and most importantly, 4 out of the 5 members of the Alameda School Board have endorsed me because I do work well with others, I do get along with my colleagues, and I'm able to move projects forward. And if I'm fortunate enough to achieve your vote for the next 4 years as mayor, I look to continue where we've started, and that is the careful development and sensitive development of Alameda with an emphasis on good, clean, high-tech jobs. So thank you very much for being here tonight, and I would welcome your vote and your support.
Okay, thank you. Mayor, good morning. Frank Mataresi, up next.
Good evening, everyone. I want to thank you all for being here, and I want to thank the Sun and the Alamedan for hosting this. As everyone has mentioned, and I think we're all in agreement that the best way to find out about people who are running for office is to come hear them speak, and then to talk to them after. My name is Frank Mataresi. I served on the Alameda City Council between 2002 and 2010, and I've met a number of you in other capacities that I participated in local activities such as a private citizen working to get the bond measure passed that funded the building of this building. And I see co-chair Vice Mayor Ashcraft here. We wouldn't have this building if we didn't have a concerted effort, which I was very fortunate to be a part of the leadership of. I served on the Economic Development Commission and delivered to the City Council back in 1996 a strategic plan for the city, which actually was a roadmap to taking a derelict shopping center, which is now Bridgeside Center, and putting it to the full, vibrant center that it is today. And I think former council member DeHaan, we served together on that commission, if you remember. And I've stayed connected to the community since leaving the council in 2010, most recently with helping circulate petitions for signatures for the rezoning of federal property to expand Crab Cove. I have some goals that I've established for myself should I sit on the city council and earn your vote. Goals of bringing jobs and increasing parklands at Alameda Point, working in a sustainable budget that's within the city's means, and finishing Crab Cove, making sure that we get that park put together. I want to thank you again for being here. Look forward to the questions.
Except is Trish Benson.
Good evening, everyone. I want to thank you for coming this evening. I also see the face of the dog right at the hospital. And once again, we're here to answer your questions. I really appreciate this opportunity. Thank all of you for putting this forum on. You know me because I've been on this board for the last 6 years. Before that, as PTA County President, I oversee all the PTA volunteer. I've put in thousands of community service hours working with all of you for the betterment of our community. You've also seen me in front of grocery stores recently, such as Safeway, when we were signing petitions to try to prevent the block housing development on our golf course in Albright. And more recently than that, I joined the Friends of Canal Beach to get signatures to try to expand our craft code, which is, many of us have worked on that, and and I appreciate everyone's efforts to do that. I think it's real important that we, as a community, decide the future of our community. We all have concerns about traffic. I'm very concerned about development occurring at a faster pace than solutions to address the traffic issues. Another concern that's causing me to run is if you looked at the 5-year forecast that was just presented in the June 3rd meeting at City Council. This year, we are running a deficit of $3.5 million. When you carry that forward to 17-18, negative $8.9 million, exhausting the reserves that the city has. So these are issues that must be addressed. I want to work hand in hand with you to do that, and I know we can do this. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Singh, thank you.
Hello, thank you for having us there. My name is Stuart Chen. I currently serve on the City Council. I've had 13 years of public service experience, starting with the Social Service Board. I served 8 years on the City Social Service Human Relations Board, 3 years on the County Human Relations Commission, 2 years on the Hospital Board, Healthcare District Board, and then, lucky enough, in 2012, I was elected to the City Council. I've served that capacity since then. Guys, we have it good here in Alameda. This current administration, the City Council, we have done a lot. And I do not have to repeat what Mayor Gilmore has enumerated as far as achievements. People are moving to Alameda from all over the Bay Area. There's a price war. People are overbidding, they're paying the asking, way above the asking price. Come live in our city. Because we have good schools, over 20 parks, and we're building more parks. We have good public services. We have responsive public services. We have low crime rate. All these good things that's happening in Alameda, it's because of current administration. And we want to be sure we continue it. But is this a perfect city? No. Is there room for improvement? Of course. We have issues, and you know that. We live in this town too. There's traffic. There's transportation issues. There's development of Alameda Plan is coming up. There's a lot more issues. There's finance and budget. We'll be the first to admit it. We have issues, but we need work together to make sure we can come up with a solution to fix our problem. And I want for re-election because I want to use my expertise, my experience, the 12 years, 14 years in public service, to help this city move forward and to improve and expand the quality of life of our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's move on now to questions. And the first question we have from readers is the following. Are you for or are you against rent control? If you oppose rent control in Alameda, please explain your opposition to it and tell us how you would protect vulnerable families and seniors from being driven out of town by rapidly rising rents. And the first to answer is Trish Spencer.
Okay, I want to thank you for this question. I'm not sure who you asked this, but I understand I'm a renter. I've been renting for 15 years in this community. I have concerns, just like many of us that are paying rent. What's the bill going to be next month, next year? What's it going to look like? Right now, we have an advisory group that we file a concern, try to get it resolved without working with communication. And when I checked the website on that, they have not had meetings for the last couple of months. There's hardly any minutes on the website. First of all, I think it's very important that anyone that's having these concerns know of the process so that they do file the complaints so that they are addressed and we have the opportunity to resolve them in this venue that was set up here in this community to try to, as an alternative to rent control. So this is very serious because there doesn't seem to be, people don't seem to know that this is an option. Another answer the survey as a tenant so that the city can gather information and look and see, Is this working? How do we resolve this better? I'm an attorney, and I try to use my legal skills to help resolve problems. And I'm not sure that the community is aware also. There's a case, Costa Hawkins, Costahawkins, and that was instituted as signed in 1995. And that makes a difference because it actually exempts quite a few housing that's here in this town that rent control would not impact. For instance, any housing after 1995. Also, single-family homes and other units like condominiums that have the separate title. Now, I personally live in a house, so rent control would not affect that. Rent control would not affect that. Many of us here in townhomes that were built after 1995.
Thank you. Next is Councilmember Chen.
I first became aware of this issue about 6 months ago. I went to the initial tenant landlord, I guess, forum that the Renewed Hope had sponsored. I was appalled that we have this issue, and that issue, the severity and the gravity has not been addressed. The City Council last Tuesday spent 2 hours talking about this specific issue. We need to know how bad we have it in this town and how to address it. Is it rent control? Is it rent stabilization? I can tell you, I really don't know until we find out the issue and how deep of a root this problem is. But we are aware of it. The City Council majority approved a community stakeholders forum. And I encourage you, those who are directly impacted and affected by this, please, Jeff Combra, who was on is going to head this community forum. Look him up, call him. You want to join and be part of this forum, this discussion forum, please. Not involved from tenants, from landlords, from non-profit group. It will give us more inclusive, more comprehensive picture of what's happening. And I want in the City Council would like to hear about possible solutions, recommendations, and so we can set the right policy for this issue. Thank you.
Mayor.
We are having a very serious discussion now about rising rents in Alameda. The question was asked, do I favor rent control or do I not favor rent control? I don't know yet because I don't have the information. I don't know, I've heard that we have rents going up as much as 25% a year, so that clearly is a problem. I don't know as I stand here if these are a few bad if the landlords, or if the problem is a lot more pervasive than that. And depending on the size of the problem, that is going to dictate what kind of solutions we use to solve the problem. You don't need to take a sledgehammer to kill a gnat. You may need a sledgehammer if you're attacking a big tree or something like that. We need to understand the size of the problem. The second thing we need to do is we should make it real. We should look at other communities who have instituted rent control or rent stabilization processes and determine how well those processes have worked in those other cities. Did it achieve the desired outcome? Did it mean that rent stabilized? Did it lead to more affordable housing or not? Those are the questions that we need to ask, because make no mistake, if this city moves down the path of rent control or rent stabilization, it will be a very expensive proposition now to administer a program like that. So before we go down that path, we need to find out if that path is one that's worthwhile, one that will work, or if there are things short of that that we can do, which is to give the Rent Review Advisory Commission more teeth. So I'm open to looking at all sides of the issue, but I need good, solid information to help form the decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Odie?
So prior to going into government service, I was an attorney, so I call myself a recovering attorney. One of the specialties I did was landlord tenant. So I had an opportunity to represent tenants that were faced with some of the most bad landlords, and I also represented landlords who had some really bad tenants. So what my concern is about rent control, at least the way it's been implemented in places like San Francisco and Oakland and Berkeley, is that the only people that really win sometimes, what we do, as Stuart Chen and Mayor Gilmore said, we need the data. I want to know whether this is a handful of bad actors. Because I believe most tenants, and the vast majority of landlords are reasonable, like Trish Spencer, just because I don't own where I live, it's my home. And I think we need to make sure that we respect the rights of tenants, but we also respect the rights of property owners. Property owners have to, if they can't make money, then they can't, continue to supply the housing stock that we need. I looked at the housing element, and the housing element said, for upper income folks here in Alameda and middle income folks, and even the lower portion of middle income, rents are still considered affordable. It's only when you get to the very low income where it's not affordable. So affordable housing, that's another issue, but I really want to see, I want to see some data. I want to know how big of a problem is, and I want to make sure that whatever solution that we come up with, that actually solves the problem. It may be more authority for an advisory board, it may be giving them arbitration powers, it may be giving them subpoena powers, but let's make sure we understand what the problem is. And as the mayor said, we don't attack something with a sledgehammer, that doesn't need a sledgehammer.
Thank you very much. Frank Mataresi?
2 minutes to try and answer this one is difficult. And I'm just amazed that we do have to address something like this. However, when Alameda, it's a very desirable location. And when we have a situation where housing prices are rising and rents are rising, it's very difficult to see what role government plays in that. And from my research that I've done as this issue has come up over the years, is I have not seen rent control law that truly has been effective in stabilizing or lowering rents. All you have to do is look at San Francisco or any of the other cities that are on the California Consumer Affairs website that are listed as having some sort of rent control. So, like my colleagues here at the front table, I think getting data is one thing, but immediately what we can do is make sure that our Rent Review Advisory Commission is hearing cases and making those cases public and known to the council. That's number one. Number two, one thing that we can do today is work as hard as we can with the Housing Authority, which is the one vehicle, because it's nonprofit, because it's subsidized, to help fill in at the very low end of the economy, where we can take care of some of the needs of people who are most vulnerable in our society, in our city here in Alameda. So I think those are things we can do immediately, particularly to make sure that we have fair treatment. And then as we gather data, and I just, the research that I've done now is that I have not seen a rent control law that has had the intended effect of keeping rents stable.
Thank you. The next question deals with climate change. Climate change is a global reality, and the effects of which don't now. We do prepare our own city on consequences of climate change and prepare our youth to lead us on this issue.
2 minutes to answer climate change. All right, climate change. It's something that clearly affects all of us. I think there are different things that we can do. I think the first thing that we need to do is get out of SNC vehicles. We need to take more transit, ride bikes, walk as much as we can. That's on that side. We also need to deal with greenhouse gas emissions. We've partnered with CASA to help do that. We also need to pay attention to rising sea levels. And for most of you who've been following the development at Alameda Point, there is a plan in place to deal with the rising sea levels and to shore up the land out there. But climate change, and then also I think the other part of the question was preparing our youth.
How will we prepare, let's say, the next generation to cope with what's coming up?
Okay, I forgot to mention recycling. Alameda does a fabulous job of recycling. We have one of the highest recycling rates in the county, so we are already taking steps that way. I think a lot of it is information and education, not just to adults, but also to children. I'm finding that children are more in tune with the climate change issue than a lot of adults are. They will often say to you, well, why are you throwing that away? That can be recycled. And it's not to be reused. And it's not just recycling, it's repurposing things. We live in a society of plenty. And a lot of us, I know I'm one of them, have a lot of stuff. We could repurpose, reuse things rather than going out and buying new things. Climate change is a major issue, and fortunately here in California we believe in the existence of it. I think part of our job is to convince other areas of the country and throughout the world that climate change is real.
Thank you very much.
And Mr. Roddy, next question.
Yeah, it's on. I just wanted to make sure the mic is.
So I'll take the second part first. Sorry, I have two, I guess they're adults now, children. And my younger daughter, we took her to school, college up in Oregon. And, I'm just minding my own business, enjoying it. And some kid reaches into the trash can, pulls out an aluminum can and says, this is in the wrong place. I'm going to put it somewhere else. Now, I think that's pretty good sense of optimism for our youth, because when I was 18, to be perfectly honest with you, I probably wouldn't put my hand in the dirty trash can. So as far as climate change, in my job, one of the best things about it is we get to work with and collaborate with some of the best and brightest people. And a couple months back, we had a meeting with scientists up at Lawrence Berkeley Lab in Berkeley, and they said the single best way that we can accomplish our AB 32 greenhouse gas emission goals is in construction, because construction is in buildings are where we emit a lot of our greenhouse gases. So I think as we build on Alameda Point, no matter what plan you like, no matter how many houses you want or don't want, how many commercial buildings you want or don't want, we have to make sure that that construction is done in a zero net energy fashion. And the same thing as in our adaptive reuse. When we renovate some of these old buildings, we want to make sure that we do them in such a way that we eliminate greenhouse gases. So I think the mayor touched on the other point, especially where it relates to traffic. We have to find a way to reduce the single occupancy measure. I don't have an answer to that. If I did, I'd probably be running for U.S. Senate or something else instead of Alameda City Council. But I think we have to continue to pursue ways we can do that through increased public transit. In my job, remember, I can help advocate for the state to bring more money to Alameda for public transit solutions. And lastly, if you had a chance to see these Google self-driving cars, they're electric cars that can drive you around with a 25-mile-an-hour maximum speed limit. That'd be kind of cool if we can do the test ground for that. Test what these things that happen to the car in 5 years. Don't we use single occupancy traffic cars? Greenhouse gases.
Well, global warming, it is a reality. So currently the state law has two, one from the Assembly. SB 375, reducing greenhouse gas from cars and light trucks. Another state mandate is AB 32, Global Warming Act of 2006. Here in Alameda, AMP is going to increase more electric vehicle chargers as a start. And we're going to replace 3,300 light fixtures, the high pressure lights with more efficient LED lights. There are going to be rebates as well for residents who are going to switch over to LED lights. What is the right solution? Changing driving habits. I am 52 years old and I changed. I drove a Zap for 2 years, a tiny 3-wheel motorcycle, and that broke down. So now I'm taking the estuary crossing. It's great, guys. Hey, how about this free shuttle to Oakland and walk to my office? Changing habits. We have a transportation demand management, and people have doubts. Is it going to work? Is it going to make people get out of their vehicle and take public transit? I don't know. Is it going to work? You have to try it. I know it worked for me. I changed my driving habit. So education. Make sure people realize global warming is a reality, and we all need to do our part. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to answer that part first also. So volunteering in schools as a parent, helping in soup at lunchtime, being a substitute teacher, and being a school board member. We are teaching our children in our classes with our teachers and with other parent volunteers, recycling, reusing, and conserving. And you see it. They know how to sort the trash. They know how to conserve. Great ideas and energy of how to do that. Another thing, of course, we all do, I know many of us here do it, we model that behavior. We do it ourselves. So in our home, my husband and I both drive Priuses. I did have a van. I'm a mom of 4 kids, so yes, I had the van. And after they graduated from high school, we down to Prius, so we're all together. We all do these things. Now, in regards to what do we want to do as a city, there are things we are charged to do by the state of California, and that's what this AB 32 and Senate Bill 375 is about. We are charged with reducing our greenhouse gas emissions to 1990 levels by 2020. That is almost here. And things that are discussed about how do you do that. When you're doing building, you have to be very careful to do building where there is public transportation nearby. And that creates a problem for us here in Alameda, and we know that. Unfortunately, when you put the building ahead of the public transportation, which is occurring here, you actually end up increasing your greenhouse gas emissions, which is the opposite of what we are charged, which is actually another reason why many of us are very, very concerned about the housing development that is occurring ahead of any plan to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So we need to first come up with our plan, our transportation plan that works before we continue all the development that we see across this island, which unfortunately is the opposite direction of what we need to do. Thank you.
Thanks very much. The third question deals managing traffic. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry.
Thank you. As far as the children go, I'm constantly pacing to try and keep up with them because they're getting ahead of us. And I think it's been mentioned a couple of times here that we have to break some of the habits that we grew up with as far as single occupancy gas vehicles, as far as incandescent light bulbs, which are almost a thing of the past. That is going to be a constancy as we go through this dealing with the effects of climate change. We're going to see, and we're already seeing, strange weather patterns or unfamiliar weather patterns, which are going to cause us difficulties. There's extreme drought, there's potential for high winds, there's potential for rain, maybe someday, I don't know. But all of those are manifestations that it's real. And we have a couple of things going for us in Alameda that we need to amp up, if you will, and pardon the pun, but we have our own electric company here. And the electric company is going to put us toward model city status because our electric company is headed in the right way. And we can address those goals more quickly and more efficiently, I believe, than other cities. And I think that is there's got to be a goal set for us that's ahead of what the state requires so that we can be a leader in that. Second is we've got shoreline. And I've seen the distal ends of Alameda Point. The expense of keeping those shorelines up, I think, could be mitigated by turning more of that into wetlands, which are carbon sinks, which produce oxygen, which filter the water, and which buffer us against the effects of bad weather in the bay. So I think those are two things that we can latch onto right now and make the plans for. And I think everything that's built, we got to have big green building codes across the board. Doesn't matter where it's Alameda Point or a small house. We have to make sure that we're not contributing to the problem here with our own building. Thank you.
Thank you. No problem. The third question says, since moving here in 2005, I've noticed a dramatic increase in traffic near the floating western tubes. This quality of life issue will only get worse as new housing units and new commercial enterprises are added to the west end. What is your vision for tackling this growing problem? And first up is Councilmember Chen.
Thank you. I think this question was posed to us at last night's forum. The tube, like I said last night, to physically build another tube west of the current tube is impossible. That's the turn basic for the container and cargo ships. Building another one east of the tube, where are you going to build it? Someone's backyard? Physically, it's just not possible. However, what we can do to mitigate some of the traffic is what we talked about, the transportation demand management. It's going to be in the works. We're going to charge new residents and developers a fee, so they can use that fee to take the and more control of the global warming outcome. And also the second, hopefully a solution to this is Measure BB. We are potentially going to have infused $8 billion to this county, and part of that money will go to the Jackson project. If we can somehow work with Oakland and have the county involved, and so we can increase the traffic flow coming out of Alameda, that will help mitigate a lot of our traffic concerns. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I think one of the ways to address this is to put reasonable controls and limits on residential development. And I think there's depending on who you talk to, 1,000 to 2,000 units that are being planned on the northern waterfront. And I would say that we should have no new units at Alameda Point. And I think the effect of adding something that we're going to have to manage very difficult, in a very difficult situation is I think is not realistic. Secondly, is that no matter what we do, whether we build it residents out in the point or whether we have 2,000 units on the northern waterfront, the free 880 will always be 880. It doesn't matter what happens with Broadway Jackson, as long as you're leaving the tube and your first turn to get to the freeway, southbound and northbound, is across a crosswalk where senior citizens are walking to the senior citizen center. There's going to be a problem there. And I think this is one where we have to change our behavior. And we have to figure out ways to spread out the traffic through the tubes, because there will be no new tube. If some miracle happens and BART can afford that spur that puts a BART station under Alameda and then heads over the city, I think that will help, but I'm not going to hold my breath on that. To build a new bridge, to build new tubes, the finances of that are simply unrealistic. So I think we have to address it with change in behavior, with limits on residential development on the west side of the island in particular, and with an expectation that those tubes and working with are going to necessitate working with Chinatown and Oakland in ways to help manage what we see when we make that first turn coming out of the tube.
Thank you very much. Ms. Doty?
Thanks. So again, these are not academic issues, to me. I was actually the way I drive out here for I said, like, I was going to work in downtown Oakland. And then I go to work in downtown Oakland. And the Broadway-Jackson thing, I don't know if I would, expect anything to be resolved on that for 20 years. That's one of the things we're trying to work on in our office, is to get Oakland, to sign off on something. And there are a few people that I just don't think we're going to get to sign off on that. So I'm supportive of Measure BB. I think it brings, needed funds to us. And the good news is if, we can't get Oakland to agree on the Broadway-Jackson fix, then a lot of that transit money comes here to us. And we have the opportunity here now to spend it the way we want to do it. So I'm also concerned, as former Councilmember Marisi mentioned about, the northern waterfront. That's a lot of houses. Monday, we have the transportation plan being unveiled. I disagree that, we built before the plan. We may have released, entitled the land before the plan, but, the plan's going to be out there on Monday, so we'll all get to hear what it is. One thing I'd like to see, especially on the northern waterfront with, Buena Vista, that's the only Henshaw property gets entitled and resolved, and Clement Street can go through there. It's still going to be Elm Street that goes through there. So I'd like to see, at least for the northern waterfront, the city of Alameda have our own branded bus system, our own branded transit system along the northern waterfront, and it can also serve the residents in the adjacent neighborhoods that will be most heavily impacted by the traffic. So those are things I'd like to see. Who's next?
Trish Spencer's next. Trish.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes, I can. Moving here doesn't provide a dramatic increase in traffic due to the opposing to the quality of life is worse than new housing units in the commercial planning process in West Hampton. What is your vision for tackling this growing problem?
Thank you. So I asked him to repeat that question because I think all of us know what that question is about. We sit in that traffic. That is why I am running. That is the primary problem here. We have housing development that is occurring way ahead, much faster than any solutions, any real solutions to address the transportation issue. My daughter's been attending community college the last 2 years. I'm very familiar with that traffic. My daughter graduated, another daughter graduated from Cincinnati. That traffic is real. We all know more and more housing development just contributes to this problem. It must be slowed down. We can't continue to build housing without addressing this issue. And what can we do about it? I think it actually had to be addressed before the housing was entitled. You can't do this backwards. You can't put the cart in front of the horse and hand it to us citizens and say, no, you solve it. No, that's backwards. We all know that. That is backwards. It had to be addressed for Vista. Really? That's the solution? Oh, we can have buses coming through Webster too. Really? Really? I've been there. You've all been there. Really, buses. I think we have a serious problem. I think we must slow this down and really as a community and have real meetings where the community can contribute to the conversation because we know the traffic. We take the bus as much as we can, we ride bikes as much as we can, but we also have passenger vehicles. We have a development coming up right now at Del Monte where there's allocating not sufficient parking. The neighboring communities are supposed to solve the problem. Maybe they're going to have permits to park in front of their house. That's new to Alameda, and we know that. There are too many housing developments. When you add up 1,000, thank you.
Thank you. Very good.
This is a really great question, and I'm glad somebody asked this question. Okay, traffic is a regional problem. It's not just an Alameda problem, unfortunately. Actually, the city has done studies, and the average daily trips through the tube have actually decreased over the last 20 years. They've gone down by over 17,000 average daily trips since the Navy was here. But we all know that we're stuck in traffic. Why are we stuck in traffic? Because traffic is a regional issue. It's all about 880. When 880 gets backed up, Alameda gets backed up. Think about the bridges and tubes as if it were a long on-ramp to the freeway, and that's the effect that you have, right? We have a plan for dealing with the traffic, and that's slowing development down. Not a solution. It's not a plan. We've proposed a plan, and people are shaking their heads. It'll never work. Well, I'm here to tell you that Main Street Ferry Terminal ridership has increased 55% in the last 2 years. The Harbor Bay Shuttle service has grown every single year. Marina Village is starting their own shuttle transit system, not because the city told them to, but because it makes good business sense. So that's the answer for people who say, oh, Alamedans won't take transit. We will take transit. And if you talk about stopping development, just remember that those developments are paying for some of the things that Alamedans want. Like Del Monte project, for instance, is going to pay $2 million towards the Gene Sweeney Open Space Park, and another $3.5 million to parks all over the island. So we can do it.
Thank you. Next question is the following. There's way too much housing development going on way too fast without proper infrastructure. When will city government put a bigger effort to bring companies to locate here and employ residents and not just bring retail? And first up is Ms. Burke.
So I think the mayor kind of answered part of that question earlier, that, you know, these developments are entitled, and, you know, the answer is not slowing down the developments. You know, I think we've seen, you know, a lot of positive things here in Alameda in the last 4 years. You know, now we have the Target and the Alameda Landing. You know, those generate, you know, a lot of tax, sales tax. The In-N-Out Burger coming for $500,000 in sales tax revenue. I mean, those are the things we need. I don't know if there's a budget question, you know, that's coming up, but, you know, attracting, you know, businesses to be here in Alameda with our limited land space, I think, is critical to making sure that we pay for the services that we have. But, you know, the mayor also touched on another point. This is a regional issue. You know, we're more than just an island. I work every day, you know, to work on policies that affect Oakland, Alameda, San Leandro, and all our neighboring communities. You know, we're all kind of patched together. As much as we want an island, we're an island. You know, people come from Oakland and shop in Oregon. You know, people are going to come from Oakland and shop in Oakland. People are going to come from Oakland and shop in the new, buy food at the new. You go on the Kaiser, you go on the Kaiser. So we got to think of ourselves as part of the larger East Bay community, and we have some really good East Bay, you know, East Bay development groups that East Bay business development groups that, you know, we work with every day in our office to help attract business. The city's done a good job of doing that, and I would kind of disagree with the premise of the question that we're doing.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Frank.
I think I would like us to see, to take Harbor Bay Business Park as an example, and that's been 30 years in the making. It's finally filling up. And as an owner of a business and a property in the business park, I've watched it grow and suffer through a couple of bad years, and there's momentum being gained now, and making sure that we take the point. And I would like to see the city really focus on that. I think the city took a step backwards in disbanding the Economic Development Commission. And I know that there are several people who served on that commission, I heard someone say, well, that commission was dysfunctional. Well, it may have been, but there's direction that it can be given. And I think that that's where council leadership comes in, is to give direction, and very specific direction on what sectors we want to grow and how do we increase the commercial base of the city. And I'm not talking retail, because unless we're selling hard durable goods or automobiles, we're not going to make significant gains in closing that gap in the budget with sales tax. We have to balance it out with business tax that offsets the burden that whether we rent or whether we own a property, we're all paying as residential property owners.
Councilmember Chin?
Most of the development will happen in Alameda. That's a reality. Alameda needs to be developed, has to be developed, and will be developed. You realize and you understand the city budget. And part of balancing the budget is to decrease expense and increase revenue. Developers are part of investing on they will pay development impact in the tune of about $1 million, some upwards of $1 million. They will pay like business fees, community facility fees, they'll pay transportation management fees. All the fees come to help support us, our public services, to you. Development is good, but at a pace that we can handle incrementally. We're not going to build 5,000 homes, 2,000 homes, even 1,000 homes overnight. It's going to happen incrementally. And not to mention the state mandate. We are required by state law to provide housing, affordable housing for our residents. So it's all in a pace that we can handle. But development has to move forward, and it will move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Moore?
Can you repeat?
I gotta find the question. I've got like 18 million. But there's too much housing development going way too fast without the proper city infrastructure. When will city government put a bigger effort into bringing companies to locate here and employ residents, and not just bringing retail?
Okay, thank you. So most of the development will occur at Alameda Point. The city has done careful calculations as to the infrastructure needs out there, and the price tag for that is a hair under $600 million. And we have determined that whatever comes into Alameda Point has got to pay its proportional share of that infrastructure cost. So that's one. And so we are not letting infrastructure lag development. The second thing is that the city is focused on bringing in businesses and having good, high-paying jobs for working families, okay? If we wanted to do housing, we could snap our fingers. We're not even talking about the neighborhoods that are scheduled. We could snap our fingers and have half a dozen residential developers in here tomorrow, but that's not what we're focusing on. We're focusing on commercial, office, business-to-business types of transactions, and yes, some retail, because Alamedans go off this island to shop. If they were able to shop on this island, the increase in sales tax, just in terms of bringing us up to the average of Alameda County, would bring in an additional $2 million a year that we could use to make the rest of Alameda provide goods and services that people want in Alameda, more open space. So we are focused on the infrastructure, and we are focused on the business-to-business taxes, and we are focused on creating jobs.
Thank you. Mr. Spencer.
I agree with the sentiment of this question that housing development is occurring too fast, but the idea of having a retailer is really not the right thing. We know we've got people with property there. We know there's housing developers that they want to come here. and build, build, build. We know that. Is that best for us, Alameda? Is that what we want? No, any of us do not want that. My priorities for the point are to preserve our wetlands, to create recreational area, partner with East Bay Parks, regional park. There are things like that that we can do to really benefit all Alamedans. And in regards to jobs, it's very important that we take our time, attract businesses that will support higher paying jobs in retail. Retail jobs are low paid. They're not, the majority of those jobs are not going to support an individual or a family that what we really want for our community workers. If we can attract the right companies, whether it be green industry, tech, hospital, I'm very happy to have the VA clinic coming. That would be marvelous. We can take our time, attract those businesses, higher paying jobs. We can change the traffic flow from within Alameda to the point for jobs. I think that's the direction we want to go. Take our time and do it right.
Thank you very much. The next question has to do with Craft Cove. What is your position on the rezoning of the federal parcels next to Craft Cove and the future disposition of this property? Should the city challenge the federal government's decision to seek revenue, or should the city support the federal government's decision and seek to promote the development of additional housing on this site and serve this practice?
I'd like to see that park expand on that federal property, and I think the council has adopted the initiative as it was written. So I think we're on our way to do it. I think we need to set that as our goal and accomplish it.
Thank you. Any other one?
Has been zoned open space. Unfortunately, the city does not own the property. We do not have a seat at the table at the moment. The federal government has not been willing to talk to us about this particular issue, and I'm very limited in terms of what I can say about it other than that, because we are still in litigation. The lawsuit, despite the rezoning, the lawsuit has not been dismissed against the city. And there is still mediation occurring. So as long as that is happening, I am hopeful for a good resolution and outcome.
Thank you very much, Councilman. Cove.
I like to say expand the park. I like to say leave it open space, but because of pending litigation, you can't say it. But I tell you that the council approved the citizens' initiative unanimously. It's now zone open space. And the council, 3 out of 5 of us, took out the language that could suspend the citizens' initiative. And the citizens spoke and we listened. We acted properly according to citizens' will. Thank you.
So this is another reason why I decided to run. I joined many of you to collect signatures. As a child, I sold campfire candy in front of a store. As a Girl Scout leader, I took kids to sell it. I never thought as an adult I'd be standing in front of our stores getting petitions signed to expand our craft code. This has been a tragedy for our community. This has been a taxpayer dollar to fight these big parks. Again, taxpayer dollars are funding both sides of this. We should be partnering with these big parks. The city did not have to zone to begin with. They could have taken a stand against the developer of that property through the auction. We as citizens had to fight really, really hard to get the city to listen to us. This is a serious problem. We want Crab Cove expanded. We funded a tax bill, WW, to fund that. And moving forward, we need to partner with East Bay Parks, who wants to be our partner, who wants to do something incredible there to serve our entire community, as opposed to having luxury homes there that serve very few of us. The state has gotten involved, again, on really the citizen side, to help us protect our Crab Cove there. So we can partner with the state, we can partner with East Bay Parks, and then we can take on the feds, and that's what we have to do. We have to work with our partners that care about us, that care about our beach, just like we do, and do our best to protect that property for Alamedans.
So I'm not going to rehash the path that it took to get here. I think I see Irene in the back. Irene Heater, she put a nice piece together online. I think you can access it through Michelle's website to kind of see the history. I signed the petition to rezone Crab Cove for open space. I think we need more open space here in our city. We don't have enough of it. I signed it over at Trader Joe's. Gretchen Lippau got me to sign this. I listened to her. Of course, I agree. So the thing, when this all started out, it kind of irritated me because as a taxpayer, we're funding one taxpayer-funded agency, paying their attorneys to sue the city, another taxpayer-funded entity. And the only people that are getting rich are attorneys. Again, as a recovering attorney, that's not the worst thing in the world, but as a taxpayer, I think it's not the best thing for us to do. Was try to mediate a solution. We were unable to do that. I think I really hate to do this. Agree with Tricia, but it's important that we all get on the same page. This state basically said you can't take that easement that doesn't belong to you. If we're all on the same page, the park district, the city, the state, which we're here, we get our federal elected officials to get more strongly involved and advocate for us. I think we can turn that into something beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. The next question deals with Bay Farm, and it's short and sweet. Bay Farm. Why should the master plan for Bay Farm be changed to accommodate the changes that are related about in first instance?
Thank you. So I'm a runner, and I run along that path, and you run along the pool, and it's like you're in it's a beautiful area. I really don't understand why we would want 80+ homes there, or a hotel there. It's very nice to have the club there. 3 of my kids went to Earhart Elementary. There's already plenty of traffic along there. So I personally am a Harbor Bay neighbor. I don't support changing the plan to accommodate housing or a hotel there. I think it's real important that it continue to be recreation for our community. So I support recreation there. I think it's been marvelous for that area. Once again, I don't think housing is a solution.
Thank you. Mr. Chen.
I really envy people who are not, the candidates who are not in office, because you're willing to speak your mind. For me to say I'm support or not support of housing, when that issue comes, so then I have to recuse myself. That's the reality. I cannot give an opinion publicly and say, all right, this is where Chen stands. And then comes the council and I have to vote on it. Before the discussion phase, it's irresponsible. But at this point, he withdrew this action. There's no pending that I know of. Until it comes through the process, it will be subject to a very significant process. Design review, environmental impact review report, transportation impact studies. It will go through that ringer, the same process as everybody else. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm a member of the Harbor Bay Club. I work out there. I play tennis there. I love the club. Unfortunately, I'm also a council member. And what that means is that whether you like the idea, whether you hate the idea, you cannot make up your mind before the idea comes to council. It's ethically wrong. And whether you like the developer, like the idea or not, anybody who files an application with the city is entitled to due process, a fair process. And if I were to make up my mind before the application came before council, I would not be able to vote on it. And I know some of you may doubt me. I had a meeting with the Harbor Bay neighbors, and I told them this straight up. And I also said, I knew you guys wouldn't believe me, so I checked with not one, but two city attorneys who told me that. So to my colleagues up here who already made their mind and stated that publicly, should they get elected, they will not be able to vote on this issue. Sorry.
Thank you very much. Mr.
So I think the mayor made it pretty clear about, formulating an opinion on something, and then you're having to refuse from voting. Refuse from voting. So I'm not going to deviate too much off of that, but I can share a little bit of my opinions in general. One case I remember when I was practicing, usually you have somebody say, well, I had a meeting and such was said, and he said this, and she said that. We had that meeting happen, but that's not how it was said. I had one case where there was a complete total opposite in facts. One person said, we had this meeting, and the other person said, didn't have this meeting. So one of them is not telling the truth. Clearly, they can't be right. There's no gray area. And that's kind of what I'm seeing in here, is that one party believes they have an uncontroverted right to build, there's 275 new homes, or they have a right to do it. And then the other side is saying they have absolutely no right to do that. So I will say, generally, as a former attorney, I'm a little skeptical when anyone starts telling me stuff that they have a right to do or they don't have a right to do. So I want to see, what the facts are. I want to see what the city attorney tells us, we have the obligation. And as a council, we have to evaluate the facts and say which one is true. But, I'm a little skeptical of anybody who claims, an absolute right to do or not do something.
Thank you.
I think the question was about the master plan out at Harbor Bay Development, which is pushing on 30 plus years. Pretty good master plan. I think it was reaffirmed back a few years ago when we were asked to rezone a certain parcel between Chinese Christian School and the Montessori School in the business park to consider rezoning that into from commercial to residential. And my opinion is it still needs to stay commercial, and I may have to recuse myself anyway from that if that ever comes back up again, because I'm a property owner within 300 feet of that property. So, but my opinion is it actually is a model development in a way that provides jobs that are fairly good paying within proximity to homes. It's got a ferry terminal. It has schools, but it is at capacity, and all you have to do is sit in Island Drive traffic on a weekday to know that. And I think the proximity to the airport. Do we want to put any more homes within the airport flight pattern? There are a lot of questions that will measure any of these issues that come forward. And for where I'm sitting now is, of course, the effects of doing these dominoes that have been tried. This is the third time that this issue has come up in a different form. Is to basically ruin a plan that is very, very effective in delivering a fully integrated community.
Thank you. Next question has to do with the balance. Maintaining a good balance between commercial, residential, and recreational zoning is important in many LPs. How would you maintain that balance, seeing the opportunity to address the city's revenue needs by adding more housing? In particular, and something we've already covered in another question in particular, how should the city deal with the developed desire, for example, to replace Harbor Bay Club with homes? So I think the second part of the question has been answered somewhat. The first part of the question has to do with this balance, very well put, of residential, recreational, and commercial. And first up is more of everyone.
Can you say the first part?
I corrected it. It was emailed to us and I need to get that. I need to get that. They just came over the email. Maintaining a good balance between commercial, residential, and recreational zoning is important in any elements. How do you maintain that balance when seeking the opportunity to address the city's revenue needs by adding more housing?
Well, the bulk of the development that we're going to have in Alameda going forward is at Alameda. And this community has spent many, many years dealing with the development plan. And now we're at a point where the community has come together and has approved the development plans, approved the, or I should say the envelope of the development plans, has approved the master infrastructure plan, the general plan, the zoning, and all that. And so we together collectively have decided on how to balance those types of things. Now, it's going to be also up to us collectively as build-out occurs in terms of looking at business sales taxes that are generated. We're not emphasizing housing out there. We are going incrementally. We are using what little housing we are currently proposing at Alameda Point more as an amenity to the businesses. This gets back to our carbon footprint and whatnot. You want to have places for people to live who are going to be living and working at Alameda Point, so we're not generating more traffic and urban sprawl and those kinds of issues. And when people talk about slow down development until we solve the traffic, that may be fine hearing anybody proposing, other than this administration, how to solve the traffic issue. So if your goal is dealing with traffic, you need a plan. A goal without a plan is simply a wish. And you cannot govern a city based on simply wishes. You need to have a plan. We can agree or disagree on whether or not we think the plan will work. That's a different issue. But you have to have a plan for people to be able to discuss.
So,
So I think the mayor kind of hit the nail on the head with the answer to that question. I'm going to use my note because there's some numbers. We do have the master infrastructure plan and we do have the reuse plan over at Alameda Point. And look at the numbers: 291 acres of open space, 129 acre area, which is a mixture of retail, commercial, and residential. 140 acres for Main Street, which is most of where the new residential housing is proposed. 207 acres of adaptive reuse, which is mostly businesses, and 111 acres of the enterprise sub-area. I think the city did a good job, and all of the citizens that for the last 17, 18 years that have given their input at forums and events and city council meetings and through the ballot box, that's a nice balanced plan. And we really don't have a lot of space left to develop in Alameda besides the point. And we have to do it right. But if, besides the northern waterfront, we have a few spaces left at Harbor Bay. So if you really want to answer that question, we have to look at the development plans for Alameda Point. And I think the way we've allocated it over the course of the last 17 years and come up with a plan that is now being implemented, is the right way. We really got to hand it to the administration. We now have Alameda Point building title. We have that land in our possession where we can actually make productive use out of it. It's not going to lie fallow, and it's not going to be a ghost town. And I'm very proud of our mayor, and very proud of our city council, and very proud of our city manager for getting that accomplished.
thank you.
I'll repeat that I do think that we need to increase our commercial base in this city to help right that balance and to help spread the burden that we're all addressing. We haven't talked really in depth about the budget, but I think one of the ways to get there is to, again, increase our commercial base. And I would like to see a dusting off and an updating of our strategic plan for economic development. That document was actually effective in its first years, and that we delivered several projects that were economic generators. We look at Bridgeside, we look at the theater, and I think we can apply the same thing to the point. We also be ready to go into the long haul, because, and that's why I referenced Harbor Bay Business Park. This Harbor Bay Business Park, again, has taken 30 years to mature to the point where there's enough there to complete the build out. And I would love to have an intense focus put on what is it that worked, and transfer that to building those commercial pieces and connecting the commercial dots, the industrial dots out at Alameda Point, where we can tie the maritime industry pieces that are out there together to bring in the sub-services that all have good paying trades jobs that can service those operations, to work on the green sectors, and to get some investment on alternative power and some of the other niche industries that can be brought out there. And I think that has to be a concerted effort and just an effort.
Thank you.
First of all, let me apologize. I may not be council meeting until 2 candidates for last night. On top of my head, it's been a long balance, a mixed use. Take Alameda, for instance. Out of close to 1,000 acres, guys, 1,000 acres, almost 500 is reserved for open space in nature reserve area. We have a wetland, and the current zoning in Alameda Point is Canton, so it's Townville waterfront. Waterfront Town Center has a residential. It's all balanced. I urge you to look up on the website. I mean, it's all laid out. And it went through many vetting processes, went through community forums. We got input from the community. Staff and council worked together to come up with a very balanced plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Drew Spencer.
Yeah, what if you come to divergent today to schools? This is a problem in regards to what we're asking the developers to pay for when they come and they build all this housing. There is new housing that being proposed at the market and be epicenter under our front boundaries. We all know that epicenter has been impacted year after year. There is not sufficient space. When you look at the housing that will go along the Buena Vista, those kids with feet that hate Ruby Bridges. Again, we don't have extra space in our schools. We need developers that are going to build homes, actually to come forward with a lot of money to support the building of schools. That is a very significant cost that has to be addressed. Another issue that has to be addressed by the developers, as opposed to handing it to our community and expecting our school district and us to fund these schools. That's a very, very serious problem. In regards to balance, in this area, other than Piedmont, the city of Alameda has the fewest jobs proportionate to the citizens that are here. We really need to focus on higher paying jobs, not retail, protect our wetlands, our parks. I know all of us, there are actually areas within Alameda that don't have sufficient parks. Again, there have been areas across Alameda that have been asking for more parks, community gardens, things like that. So in regards to balance, my concerns are to protect our parks, to actually build more parks, to make sure we're taking care of our students and bringing in higher paying jobs and taking our time to do it right.
Thank you very much. This question deals with the city's finances. The city's, this question was addressed simply to Mayor Gilmore, but we'd like to ask all the candidates to answer. Question goes like this: the city's former finance director, Fred Marsh, projected that an annual expense for pensions and OPEB will increase from $14 to $18 million in the next 4 fiscal years. Do you agree with Mr. Marsh, or do you foresee increased future pension costs? And first up is Mr. Chip.
course, I agree with that. Just like everything else causes pricing. All liabilities is going to increase in the millions of dollars. That's why the city will have to work with our labor unions. We need to go back and work out a rate of contribution that is sustainable for the city. We need to increase some sort of trust, a reserve to build a trust fund so we can pay off our liabilities. Fred is a very, very intelligent and capable finance director, and I'm very satisfied. Thank you.
Yeah, I think this is one of those, I saw a book entitled this, it's a long emergency. It's one of those things, these graphics that it says it all, that we've got a general fund that has a reserve of $24.7 million today in this fiscal year, and that's going to be at zero in 2018. And this is one of those contributing factors that we talk about as far as what's called an out year, those years out in the future, and it's going exponentially. And I think this is not just a matter of issue for Alameda, it's a matter of issue for every city in the state, because the only solution that we have to this is to work collaboratively to figure out a way to move the burden away from cities that can't afford it to the employee. That's the hard fact. It's going to have to be shared. And we have to put a budget down that is within our means. And I know that the state of California did something along those lines, and it was very painful. The city of Vallejo did it. It's very painful. They're right now, their biggest sector, 80% of their general fund goes to public safety. It's because they cut everything else so that they have a truly balanced budget. And the way I see this is we go from a $2.4 million excess, and I don't know how you have an excess when you borrow money from future budgets, but it goes to minus $8.9 million in 2018. It's a math question, and we have to. That's a hard dose of reality that I think we have to swallow in the next few years. And I think swallowing it sooner rather than later gives us time to recover and not compound the problem. Otherwise, it's like trying to pay off a credit card with the minimum payment that's due.
Thank you.
We'll never get there.
Thank you.
So, all due respect to the previous questions, I think this is probably the most important question of the night. And the single most important thing that a council can do is negotiate their contracts with their public employees. You know, and we've got numbers, 70% of our budget is made up of public safety. So on one hand, we don't want to see Alameda become like our neighboring communities. So a couple of months ago, I had an opportunity to do a ride-along with CHP in Oakland in the middle of the night on a Friday, and I was just astounded by the stuff that goes on there. You know, we were all sleeping in our beds here in Alameda, and yet in the Home Depot parking lot, you know, a car was getting shot up, you know, lit on fire. We were chasing sideshow people all around the world. You know, and that's because they've had dramatic cuts in their public safety budget. So how do we accomplish that? You know, I look at what we did in the state when we had the issue with the CalSTRS, which is the teachers' retirement system. And we brought everyone together and sat down and collaboratively figured it out. The teachers got a COLA raise, and they were able to put that COLA raise back into the pensions. The districts had to contribute over the course of a phase and approach over the next few years to the problem, to the solution, and the state pitched in a big amount of the solution. I think that's the same thing we have to do here locally. The rest issue of OPEB and pension smoothing. It's $244 million over the next 30 years. So like a mortgage, we don't have to pay it off right away, but if we don't take care of it now, in the next 2 or 3 years, it's going to get away from us. And I think we make progress in cutting costs. We have a good collaborative relationship with our bargaining units that we did not have 4 years ago. I think that's been instrumental, and that'll be the way we do it. You know, I talk about this for a while because there's lots of ways you can do it. Look at the CalSTRS model where everyone contributes, including the employees, you know, and the city. And you also look at some of the things they've done in San Francisco, with spousal medical benefits as well as increased contributions and also cost sharing on the increase in medical premiums. But okay. That's the question you need a lot of time to answer.
Thank you. I would encourage all of you to go to the June 3rd, 2014 City Council meeting where the document that some of us are referring to is on. That's when it was presented. Those numbers are real. I trust those numbers. I think all of us do. Unfortunately, those numbers show the city's fiscal year just ended. It's June 30th and it starts again July 1st. So if you look at the 13-14 year that just passed, the expenditures from that year to this next year, 14-15, increased $5 million. However, our revenues only increased approximately $800,000. That's a serious problem. When you continue that going forward, you do end up exhausting the reserves with a deficit of $8.9 million in the year 17-18. That is a serious problem. We have to be able to address this as a community, putting everything on the table. I am not accepting any campaign contributions from any of our bargaining units. It's important that we work it's very important that we be able to have an honest conversation that the entire community feels that we are doing our efforts to be well in a manner that does respect these numbers. We have to get this under control. We have to put everything on the table. We need to be very, very transparent.
Thank you. Mayor?
I have the utmost respect for Frank Marsh, and I will miss him terribly, and Fairfield is very lucky to have him. Having said that, however, if you have attended any of the City Council budget meetings, Mr. Marsh gets up there and runs the projections over 5 years so that we can plan. And he is always very careful to say, this is how things are going to play out if no corrective action is taken. When I got elected in 2010, we were told that the city was going to go bankrupt by 2011 or 2012. Not only have we not gone bankrupt, but we have managed to grow our reserves. We have a cooperative relationship with all of our bargaining units. We have made strides over the last 4 years. Newly hired public safety employees are not, their spouses are not going to share in the retirement, okay? Our folks, by the end of this contract, will be paying 15% towards their retirement. Anything above 9% is the employer share, and that is one of the highest percentages in Alameda County. Poor Fairfield, they're paying 4% for public safety, so they're not even paying all of their share. We will continue to move forward to make gains. As we negotiate moving forward, it's going to involve some combination of our bargaining units paying more towards the pension and the city making a firm commitment to a certain amount to fund the trust that we established last year. So it's a 30-year problem in the making. We are taking steps to correct it as we speak. We are not kicking the can down the road.
Thank you very much. Next question deals with the following. Would you support the opening up of the end of Island Drive to the business park? Why or why not? And for Ms. Soto.
So another Bay Farm question. I think I said it maybe 3 times now. I used to live on Bay Farm. I lived at the end of a cul-de-sac. And behind me was a preschool. And cars would zoom down through our subdivision and realize it was a dead end. And then they would zoom back out of the subdivision where my kids were playing and riding their bikes in front of our house. You know, people would come and drop their kids off at the preschool and park in front of our house. I think the folks that live at the end of Island Drive appreciate the fact that they live on a cul-de-sac. They bought their houses, understanding that that was what the bargain they were getting. So, I'm really skeptical of any plan that would open up Island Drive.
Thank you.
I think this goes back to the skill of whoever planned that, whoever put that master plan together. One of the difficulties when you have commercial activities next to residential activities is buffering the impact of the commercial activity from where people live. And when I was on the planning board, with stages that are in neighborhoods where there's commercial activity. And fortunately, the Harbor Bay Business Park has a fairly substantial buffer, and part of that buffer is that Island Drive stops where it stops at Catalina, and it allows a clean separation of, not spatially, but demarcating and reducing noise with the line of trees to insulate those neighbors from the activities of the business park. And remember, on the other side of the business park, there's a coffee roasting facility that operates at night, and trucks go in out early in the morning. There are also some operations that work at night. And I think that buffer is critical in protecting the neighborhood. And it's also critical to the success of the business park, where you've got business activities that are allowed to expand without worrying about significant impact on people who live close by.
Thank you. Mr. Chen? And again, I feel the concerns of our congregating residents. This is another issue that when it comes to the council, in the due process of public discussion, staff recommendation, I will be willing to vote on it. And so we should have a good opinion before it comes to decisions. Thank you. Dr. Spencer?
So I want to make sure everyone knows what we're talking about. If you drive down an island, you just keep driving, you're going to enter into residence, and then you're going to find it's like a gate. And it says, no trespass, it's got vines, ivy growing on it. It doesn't appear that anyone has used it. It looks like it's always been closed there. We also see families nearby, very close. It's really a dead end, and the families are out there, that's what I saw, and that's what you see when you're there. I don't know why people are being asked this. I don't know if someone is thinking about opening it. However, I do support leaving it as is. I would actually support putting in a permanent barrier. I think that's what we currently have. I don't know why you would want traffic going through there. So that's my position.
Thank you.
I really continue to be puzzled by this question, because let me state very clearly and for the record, the city has no plans to open up Island Drive, and as far as I know, no developer or anybody else for that matter has proposed to open up Island Drive. So I'm really puzzled as to why this question keeps coming up. But having said all of that, I don't see any reason to open up Island Drive.
Final question. What is your opinion of the influence of our public safety workers here in city politics? And for
I think anybody can contribute to a campaign. I think that's been established by law and free speech. Anybody's going to contribute to the city. I've done that before, and it puts you in a bad position, and it makes you look over your shoulder all the time, and it calls all your decisions in question when the real tough decisions come up. And I think it just, from my own opinion, it's not worth it.
Thank you. Maybe one.
I'm really proud to say that I have support from a broad
cross-section of people. I have individuals, I have business owners, and I have unions. And one thing I have made very clear to people who support me is that while I welcome your contribution, no one should expect favoritism simply because they have contributed to my campaign. Those individuals, unions, or businesses are not welcome.
Just like Mayor Gilmore, I've had support from many different sectors of the community, from healthcare, to attorneys, to labor union, to small business owners, to patients of mine. Today, I've raised close to $25,000 from very sources. Sources like my wife, who gave me $1,000. I got Chinese restaurant owners who gave me $1,000. Ringo Liu, who was the realtor in Alameda, gave me $1,000. Rob Wanda gave me $1,000. He gave me $700. I haven't received any new checks yet. Well, I'm sorry, I got one from the Alameda County Labor Union. So I will accept contributions and donation support from many different sources, as long as they do not ask us, and I will not commit to any support as a feedback or whatever. I said earlier in one of the questions that to solve our OPEB liability, we need to go back to the union, which includes the police and fire, and we need to get a better rate of contribution to lower our liabilities. It is a must that we need to go back and work out a plan to balance our budget, which includes a better rate of contribution from our labor parties. So as far as support, yes, I have had support in my prior election from the fire and the police, and from the teachers, and from many different business sectors. And I'm proud of the fact that I can reach out to a wide, very different sources of culture and people and business and sector, and to reach out to them and to be able to get support. And I'm proud of the fact that I can be a council member for everybody, for all of Alameda, not just one sector, not just the union and non-union, but for all of them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so any appearance of impropriety is a problem. To have this question asked is a problem. We have a serious problem with our budget. If you look at last year, we had a surplus at the end of the year, 2.4 million. If you look at this year, what the forecast is, negative 3.5 million. That's an approximate $6 million difference from where we were last year, at the end of this past year, to what's the forecast this year. In our city, our highest expenses are for labor. We know that. I am not accepting campaign contributions from anyone that has a contract with our community. It's very important that everything be on the table and that our community know that everything is truly on the table. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just a
I also have a broad base of leaders, working people, and women individuals, businesses. I also feel secure in my own character and my ability to make an independent judgment. I'm going to be a council member for everyone in Alameda. I don't be able. I don't feel like I'm going to give in just because somebody gives me a contribution. I mean, first of all, that's illegal. And I'm confident that I have the spine to stand up to them. If feel that they have the confidence to say no to somebody because they give them a contribution, then maybe that's not the person who won on city council. As far as labor unions, I was raised in a union household. Union employees, these are the people who teach our children. These are the nurses that take care of us under sick. These are the firefighters and paramedics that take care of us under talk. These are the police officers that keep our streets safe. These are the pipe fitters that fix our toilets. These are the people that build our houses. These are the people that spread our. These are everyday working people. Everyday people like you, like me. If they don't have a voice at the table, then they're going to be, part of the time getting members. So, I believe very strongly in the union process. I'm honored to have the support of the Alameda Labor Council, the building trades, and receive contributions from SEIU, who does no business here in the city of Alameda. And I believe I have the strength of character to say no. It's part of my job to say no to people. And people call us every day and ask us for stuff. It's part of my job. I have that strength. I have the ability to do it. And if others don't, then that's the problem.
Thank you. Say good evening and thank you to all the candidates for coming here and spending time with us.